It's not about new products, new technologies. It's not about revolutionary design. It's not about outrageous creativity, open spaces, brainstorming sessions. It's not about the car we use, the brands we buy, the t-shirt we wear at work. Not even the cutting-edge gadget we're proud of.
Real innovation in management is going to be tough because it's going to challenge a lot of those folks to give up some of their power, to give up some of their prerogatives.
There are so many antibodies to this.
We all want to do something that says, but for my presence in this world, this would not exist.
One of the issues of innovation is that people think it's some kind of revolutionary process. It's a totally different kind of conversation than business people normally have.
These kind of traditional patterns are very difficult to overcome in a firm.
What you can do, though, is you can make the right kind of decisions.
To allow you then to begin focusing and answering very specific questions.
If you're not doing that, our only other choice is we all join the race to the bottom.
A magic force strong enough to change the world in a second. This very second. A sign of our fast and ever-changing times, or the coolest way to dress up the same old habits. Innovacion, the contemporary flagship of world-class management, or the complex blend of action and distraction behind it. From the very beginning, human beings have been changing their lives through innovation, changing their environment, the way they interact, the way they relate with resources and technology. Paradoxically, today, we seem to believe that innovation as a process is far from our reach, an unattainable alchemy, the exclusive property of big companies who will magically deliver what we want while creating the breakthrough business models we should admire and emulate.
And you talk to anybody who's interesting, and you have, this great joy of talking to all these interesting people here. And if you talk to anybody who is interesting, and you say, how did you end up doing what you're doing? Inevitably, anybody doing anything interesting, making a real contribution, will say, it's a long story.
One of the reasons I think it's been so hard to build companies that are adaptable and innovative is the companies we have are built on a set of principles that, like standardization and hierarchy and specialization, that were focused on reliability and efficiency and so on.
One of the issues of innovation is that people think it's some kind of revolutionary process. We're now going to be innovative, and all of a sudden everything's going to change.
The dilemma is the things that are most important to business success today are the least measurable. You can measure some of the outcomes, whether you're innovative after the fact, but it's very difficult. How do you measure passion? How do you measure trust?
So we have to work very hard to make those kinds of forces understandable and actionable for business.
Because necessity is the mother of invention.
But we need some alternatives to those. I mean, we need to complement those with some that are focused more on adaptability and engagement and so on. So in understanding how to do this, you have to go look at the things in our world that are highly engaging or highly innovative or highly adaptable.
So we can honestly wonder where the boundaries of true innovation lie. Whether our generation, day after day, commonly regards it only as colorful makeup, astonishing technologies, crazy ideas coming out of creative labs, or hired isolated geniuses. That's the perfect stew for gimmicks, the birthplace of misconceptions around what innovation is, what its real, its deep meaning is, what it is called to do.
The reality is that most companies kind of take management mostly for granted and don't think about their management processes and systems as avenues for reinvention, don't think about management as something that could help them build a competitive advantage.
Well, a big part is because that they solved the design piece of the equation, but they didn't solve the business model equation.
Innovation is economics and talks about what enters the marketplace.
Innovation is the creation of new forms of value in anticipation of future demand.
To me, innovation is identifying new needs.
It can be as small as a change in a straw you use in your drink, or as large as anti-gravity or immortality or something you might come up with.
Basically, I mean, there's loads of ideas out there, but the ideas that matter are the ones that resonate with the consumers.
If you are able to see where demand will come next, and get there a little bit ahead of the rest of the world in terms of creating products, services, and tools to meet demand rather than chase demand.
If you look at the structure of the modern firm, it's very much constructed to produce, basically to mass produce commodity physical goods.
As you move up that chain of meaning, you must continually redouble your efforts.
So they kind of tend to just go along incrementally changing things at the margin, but don't often step back and say, are there opportunities to really fundamentally reinvent the way we do the work of management?
There are companies that manage to unveil the hidden power of innovation, pouring new light on processes and people, reshaping talent recruitment and investment, bringing the future back to the present. Now, can you think of innovation without thinking of Google? Think out of the box and try to put aside the candy bar, the in-company gourmet restaurant, the 24-hour laundry, the feel-at-home desktop decoration, some of the gimmicks pinpointed by convention.
What happens as companies grow, they start out generally, quite adaptable, quite innovative, and then as they grow, they kind of become less so, but they become more efficient. And in a way, companies, as they grow, often trade away units of innovation, trade away units of adaptability for units of efficiency and predictability and so on.
What's new about innovation, I think what really makes it a kind of a more crisp process, is this ability to rapidly prototype, to sort of do things in public with very quick reaction, almost do it hand in hand with your users.
But now with new technology, where instead of being a hierarchical review, I can do a peer review, where everyone in the organization, rather than depending on my boss to tell me what to do, everyone in the company can understand what's the mission, what's the target, and write themselves into that story.
So I just see this over and over and over and over. This is why you have employers who like to hire musicians and athletes. Why? They show up and practice, and they show up the next day, and they know they're not going to get great at something unless they put in the time. And it is hugely important.
So what we're doing is building new networks of expertise in each one of those areas, talking to each other to identify new gaps in the landscape.
The reality is it's a process. So the first aspect is to empower people to be able to think differently.
Where you had intrinsically motivated people who had autonomy and the freedom to experiment, follow their curiosity, trying stuff.
There are things that are actually driving us to do it. It's not only a matter of can we, I think it's more a matter of now we must.
Genentech, the biotech firm, lets its scientists spend 20% of their time working on anything that they want. Google does the same thing, as a well-known example. Now, something like 50% of Google's new products and services the year before last were created during this 20% time.
Flexible hours, self-managed projects, market analysis, collaborative customers, open innovation, exciting accountability are some of the multiple triggers that thrust Google up to the top as the brightest star in the business universe, and at the same time bring down to earth the quintessential threats that weave into a complex whole, the beating heart of innovation. When trying to discover milestones in the history of business and innovation, nothing better than following the General Electric timeline back to the very beginning with Thomas Alva Edison, its mentor, founder, and manager. The great inventor, the Wizard of Menlo Park, is another example of that miraculous phenomenon surrounding the concept of innovation until today. Edison did not come up with more than 1,000 inventions. He created a whole new industry.
We tend often to confuse and conflate invention and innovation. Invention is about the creation of new forms of value, frequently for their own purposes.
You could invent something wonderful. It's an invention, but nobody ever uses it. It's still an invention, but it's not an innovation. Innovation has to be used.
So the reason that this definition of innovation is interesting is because it embeds the idea of foresight directly in the definition.
This is all about the next paradigm in how to create business value and how to monetize that value.
How do I match ideas and talent, or ideas and resources to get things done? Well, traditionally, if you had an idea, you fought your way up through the hierarchy, they controlled all the resources.
I mean, people thought the telephone was going to revolutionize education in the United States. That was the first idea. Alexander Graham Bell thought people will deliver university lectures like this, which meant that the invention of voice telephony, the original idea for it was the invention of mass telephony, totally aimed at the wrong sector.
Just as Edison went to businessmen and investors to help him take his lamp from the laboratory to the market and create General Electric, today we should take innovation beyond the new product or the new technology. Innovation is about inventing business processes, transforming the essence of organizations, building entirely new markets that meet untapped customers' needs.
And so people have so much stuff, so many of their basic, functional, utilitarian needs have been satisfied and oversatisfied, that you either have to create something that the world didn't know it was missing, or infuse purely functional, utilitarian products, services, experiences with design, with story, with meaning, with emotion.
The only way we knew how to coordinate and control was with standard operating procedures and hierarchy. You rein in people. So the question is this a zero-sum game, right? Is this just an inevitable trade-off?
Send us people who can think, who can toggle between the left and right brain, who have communication skills, who understand the business context, who have a design sensibility.
It's a totally different kind of conversation than business people normally have.
What I want to know is you're aligned, you're in the stores every day, you're talking to the customers, you're inspiring those employees, you're making it easier for them to do their jobs, you're giving them more discretion to fix the problems that need fixing. Then I have some chance you can turn this thing around.
If you put people in multi-functional teams, or multicultural teams, or multilingual teams, those collision of perspectives produces breakthroughs.
How much do you think that innovation is worth to Intel? Right? Is it worth $1 billion, $10 billion, $100 billion?
If you go back over the last 100 years, learning how to make things with perfect quality, perfect replicability, this is an amazing human accomplishment, and it's just unprecedented. So let's be very proud, let's celebrate the fact we've done this, but now's the time to move on.
Quality and efficiency have been the key success factor, but the most admired CEOs of the century realized that it wasn't enough and moved a step forward. Innovation, the mirror of great management.
All part of a system. If you talk to at least what I believe are some of the most progressive companies today, and you talk to their leaders, and I'm thinking about people like Richard Branson or John Mackey at Whole Foods, they will tell you again and again that employees come first, customers come second, and shareholders come third.
If you're going to look at the future for sources of innovation, specifically new places where demand is going to happen, who are the people you need to talk to?
You know, shareholders don't create any value, any wealth, whatever. In fact, legally, they are the residual claimants.
You know what? It's not about you. It's about the customer. It's about your client. It's about your teammate. And that sort of outer directed perspective of how do I solve my client's problem? How do I solve my customer's problem?
All of us want to make some kind of difference. But I think the challenge is, whatever you're doing, you have to commit yourself to a problem that looks almost insurmountable, that looks much bigger than you are. You have no right to even think you're going to change it. But if you have the guts to do that, you wake up every morning kind of knowing that you have to do more, you have to figure out some way of tackling this, you need a different approach, you need to be able to leverage other people.
So what I look for is the willingness to take chances, the willingness to sort of embrace messiness, to have lots of small failures, and out of that, presumably, a few big successes.
That, I think, is this fundamental human yearning, and the more we're driven by that, the more we're driven by the desire to leave some kind of imprint, I think the better work we'll do.
Companies today are confronted with a new set of challenges that cannot be met with the old management model. Companies are challenged to be much more adaptable, to change more rapidly, more deeply than ever before.
That's one opportunity among dozens of opportunities.
You have to be a catalyst leader on this, and that's a big part of it. And you also have to, in some ways it's sort of the education of letting people know about what they actually can and cannot do.
If you want to get the best people working for you, the smartest, most motivated people, you actually have to create a climate that really encourages people to give their very, very best.
Forget, borrow, and learn. The three challenges of strategic innovation, if you want, since you run a business, to be profitable. Procter & Gamble forgot and transformed its traditional in-house research and development process into an open-source innovation strategy. Alibaba borrowed and married Yahoo to become the biggest e-company in China. And there are companies that constantly learn, like Starbucks and Nokia, and their ethnography programs to discover new market and customer segments in which to grow. Or IBM, which is continuously learning from the newest resources of open innovation, those that are changing the way we live, work, lead, manage.
It's about creating a culture of enablement rather than a culture of control. And you can still control things, but you have power through people rather than power over people.
You really have to have people who are sort of honest participants in the community. IBM, in its pursuit of Linux software, open source software, actually has people who participate in the Linux community and adhere to its norms.
Microsoft has been competing with free for a long time. Microsoft has Office and it has its operating systems, etc. now, and it's competing with open source, Linux and Apache and Firefox, etc.
I think we all want to do something that outlasts us. I think we all want proof that we were here. We all want to do something that says, but for my presence in this world, this would not exist.
It's just not true that most of these are volunteer communities where nobody's making money. And IBM makes money from Linux because it saves itself $1 billion a year developing its own proprietary operating system. And it's created a platform upon which it's built a multi-billion-dollar business.
It's been very interesting to see what's going on with the low-cost carriers in Europe, the airlines. Ryanair, the president of Ryanair, has promised that airfare will become free, that the seat will become free. Now, how can that be? Well, because they're not in the seat business anymore. They're in the broad travel business, so they're making the money from, the obvious things like the rental car and the hotel reservations.
Now what's happened again in this internet age is that these communities are becoming so visible that it's becoming very difficult for manufacturers to use their antibodies and keep this stuff out.
The good news about many of these technologies is they're already here. They're just slowly becoming distributed.
It's beginning to fundamentally change the way that we create goods and services and the way that we innovate in society. And this has big implications if you're General Motors and Citicorp, but it also has big implications if you're a little two-person business.
There's been a systematic shift in industry after industry from selling commodities to products, products to services, and services to experiences.
So Ford, for example, now is setting up user communities around their sync entertainment systems in their cars. They thought, well, maybe we would develop that as Ford. And now they're saying, you know what? Our community can develop that stuff.
Now, do I think that tomorrow we're going to be able to build, a Boeing or an Airbus using a completely networked, peer-based model? I don't think so. But that's clearly the way, the tide is going.
Difficult to figure out, always hard to execute. The future of management, who knows, may not strictly follow the pattern behind the new social networking technologies, but for sure, it will rewire people, structures, systems, inside out into a new interconnected human organization with innovation engraved on its DNA. Management, as we know it today, was invented as a sort of technology to solve a specific kind of problem, that of efficiency and productivity associated to scale and volume.
If you go back through human history, I think you're absolutely right. There really were only two ways of organizing human effort at scale. One was the bureaucracy, and you would have found that in the Roman army or under the pharaohs. And then, of course, you had markets, because as far back in human history, people were trading and coming together.
Last century, you had machines replace our back, our physical strength. Now you have software replacing this kind of part of our brain.
Anything that can be done by a computer will be done by a computer. And many things that you never thought could be done by a computer will be done by a computer in this century.
The abilities that used to matter most in work, the abilities that we associate with the left side of our brain, logical, linear, sequential spreadsheet abilities, still matter, but they matter less. And it's now abilities characteristic of this hemisphere of the brain: artistry, empathy, inventiveness, big picture thinking. Those are now the abilities that matter most.
And so this era of manufacturer-dominated innovation is beginning to fade away, and users are beginning to take central stage.
You can think of management just as a technology. It's a social technology, but it's just a technology for, getting groups of people to do things. And I think what we often kind of forget is that technology was invented to solve a very particular kind of problem, which was productivity and efficiency.
The form of the firm is even more out of sync, and that it calls for essentially, as Gary Hamel might say, as I agree, it calls for essentially smart people starting with a blank sheet of paper.
It's making it's disintermediating the process. It's shortening supply chains. It's making information flow more effectively. It's just better for social welfare. It's better for people.
Unless your organization encourages people to bring those capabilities of passion and initiative and creativity to work every day, I mean, if you're not doing that, our only other choice is we all join the race to the bottom.
If we can legitimately think of management as a technology, just as technology changes and evolves, is management changing and evolving? Is there anything innovative in today's innovation management? Or is it just another gimmick, a passing phase fleeting over the hot topics of business, marketing, products, customers, people?
You can't treat people like semi-programmable robots anymore. You really have to create an environment where they want to give you the gifts of their passion, their creativity.
The assumption is they want more money, but perhaps they don't want more money. Perhaps they just need to make their life better.
All of those challenges, becoming more adaptable, deeply innovative, creating engaging places to work, Those are things that our old management model is not very good at delivering. You have a new generation of folks coming to work today that simply don't want to work in the old hierarchical models.
I actually think that these abilities that are hard to outsource and hard to automate, these abilities like design and storytelling and seeing the big picture, I think that they're fundamentally human abilities, that they're abilities that all of us have.
We have to find ways of aggregating wisdom around the big strategic decisions, because no longer can you afford those to be made by a handful of people with their own biases and their own information.
So for example, Lego, has many users of their products, and they innovate with respect to their products.
I'm one of their sort of alpha users, if you will. And we come up with ideas, we develop prototypes, and then the Lego company blesses them. They either decide that, yes, this is useful, and then there's a process by which it gets turned into a formal product. I think as a result, Lego gets better products, faster products, and a better certainty of success, because they've got us amateurs as part of their development process.
So now, because of the internet, they can connect all together and find each other. And then they become a very powerful force.
Lego, the traditional game of matching pieces to create innovative samples, creative prototypes. In a way, the mechanical ancestor of collaborative work was also a pioneer in the value of co-creation with users, the seed of the new conversational models of management thinking, the yeast of wiki phenomenon applied to modern organizations.
The technologies are going to allow us increasingly for the first time to be able to do things at scale, but without the weight and the bureaucratic drag of an army of overseers and middle managers. You see this in something, like the growth of Wikipedia or Linux or any open source project where, things are done. It's much more of a network model, and that is in a way kind of a direct affront or a direct challenge to the organizational model we've used since the pyramids were built.
And this is an unprecedented force for change, a new generation of young people coming into the workforce, into the marketplace. They're becoming citizens. And in their culture is the new culture of work, is the new marketplace, and I think is the new model of democracy.
When we trace back the histories of innovations, both breakthroughs and improvements that are functionally novel, that are new things, are developed by the users.
It's kind of interesting how it came to be. It's a process that has been incorporated by corporations around the world.
But what's really happening is beyond that. It is users taking over the process themselves.
There's certain things that are hardwired into how human beings behave, and I would say one of the things that is hardwired most of all is A, the desire to have a certain level of autonomy, B, the desire to be part of a small community, not something huge, but a small thing where you know me and I know you, and there's that trust and so on. The sense of working on things that are meaningful and important to us.
So the term wiki has become a metaphor for collaboration, occurring on sometimes an astronomical scale. That means that we're now not talking about websites anymore. We're talking about creating communities, collaborating, and about new models of how you innovate.
Whenever we see 2.0 added to a discipline, a domain, a product, we immediately associate it to online communities, open source software, social networks. But behind applications and technologies, there is a nuclear feature linking management and a basic human instinct: communication. What business can learn from this digital generation is that people, markets, companies are created by something as simple as conversation.
There are a lot of new tools out there, new tools of social networking and collaboration, opinion markets, the wikis, the blogs. that tell us there's other ways of getting human beings together and getting them to work collaboratively than the old kind of hierarchical system.
Because this is called social capital. These are networks that are based on trust. The old style was you're phoning up an individual person. The new style is you get young people in their social networks.
Now, if you think about the way that the typical industrial firm is organized, it is essentially designed to squelch autonomy.
The work of reinventing management is trying to go back to some of those things that got lost as we bureaucratized, as we started to treat people like machines and not human beings, and say, gee, you know, we still need the efficiency, we still need the productivity, but in a way, how do we do it without rendering our organizations less human than the people who work there?
They resist it. And this is only now starting to change as they understand that user innovation is here to stay and that they had better adapt and pick up user innovation efficiently.
What's happening now is that collaboration costs are dropping so much in the global economy that peers can now come together and create value.
So that innovation is increasingly something that you can do in public, in collaboration with potential users.
Facebook is growing at 2 million members a week. MySpace has 220 million members. There's a new blog created every second of the day, 24 hours of the day. This is becoming a new mode of production.
They're getting more distributed all the time. Users are more and more collaborative. They're helping each other out. They're learning how to do it. So it's not like one user designs a new product. It's like users earlier in the process begin to collaborate and co-design.
I think over the next few years, we're going to constantly go back and forth and ask ourselves, okay, is this just some belief that's a legacy of history, or is this something that's hardwired in human beings that there's no way around?
However, managers are still scrambling to gain growth and creativity without losing any of the efficiency and productivity the traditional approach provides. And in between, people, habits, emotional intelligence, corporate culture, and a big question. Go over the history of management during the 20th century, from Alfred Sloan in the 20s to Peter Drucker in the late 60s, we'll see that most of the great innovations belong to the first half and took 50 to 60 years to consolidate. Now, in times when speed, change, and uncertainty reign, we are on the verge of a wider revolution of management thinking.
Real innovation in management is going to be tough because it's going to challenge a lot of those folks to give up some of their power, to give up some of their prerogatives, and yet I think it's inevitable because unless you do that, we can't build companies that can change at the pace of change.
And for most business people, they're not in a position to see them because they're moving very, very slowly, or they're moving abstractly.
It's easy to believe, you know, every generation, particularly if you've grown up with something that hasn't changed in a long time, you tend to believe that that is the only way the world can work.
So work that is routine, that is very left brain, or basically following a set of rules, that kind of work you could send overseas. That kind of work just races to the cheapest cost provider.
It's not the traditional way they work, but success might change things.
People have to be honest about is often organizations are run for the benefit of the bureaucratic class. Virtually every management book, management article in Harvard Business Review, all the stuff out there on the bookshelf, all of those things are written to managers about employees.
So you have to do work that's hard to outsource, which tends to be this kind of work rather than this kind of work.
Richard Florida, author of The Rise of the Creative Class, turned on a sign of alarm the new generation could disregard or start to learn how to live with. The next 15 to 20 years will be a battlefield between the forces of pyramidal organizations and those of relentless creativity, and none of them will surrender without fighting.
There was a time, and in many cases it's still true, where companies really were run for the benefit of the managers, not the shareholders. And you could see companies that, you know, went for year after year with very mediocre performance and no heads rolled, and they really didn't take that very seriously.
Now we have a problem for business because many of the most important variables, the variables we care about, are exactly those kinds of risks.
The world is too complicated to do things for instrumental reasons. Instrumental reasons are when you do something because it's going to lead to something else. Fundamental is when you do something basically as the end in itself, as you're saying, for the joy of the task because it's interesting.
I think the best people to reinvent management are not managers. The best people to reinvent management are the people who are struggling under the yoke of all these systems and all these things. That
what you can do, though, is you can make the right kind of decisions.
But for most fields, they're going to place a renewed focus on creativity and innovations.
In that scenario, will executives and employees be eager to play their role in the game? Will they be ready to rethink conventional management practices and abandon the safe habits and dogmas they've never dared to question?
Failure is an absolutely essential part of experimentation.
People don't make mistakes. They basically come into work, they sit at their desk, and they say, how can I not make a mistake today?
Well, the reason is that our brains are designed to respond to threats from other people.
But something happens when we go to work in a way that our organizations are less adaptable, less innovative, and less engaging than we are.
We'd like to succeed fast, but success is unpredictable. We certainly don't want to fail slowly and expensively. So, I mean, I think if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough.
And your internal employees should not be afraid of this.
Some would argue it's not even a 20th century system, let alone a 21st century system. It's essentially a 19th century system that is woefully out of sync with the realities.
You know what? The Industrial Revolution was a long time ago. These kind of traditional patterns are very difficult to overcome in a firm.
You're going to see the invention of new fields as we change what we think of as the overall life cycle of innovation.
Now, if the Industrial Revolution set different parameters for wealth distribution, the sea change we are facing today puts at stake the fundamental principles of management, from power and resources to teamwork and connectivity.
We're at the beginning of a major eco-industrial revolution, but as a library of inventions that we can apply for business.
In many firms, it's very difficult. I mean, because there's so many antibodies to this.
But you look for places where you see human capability being unleashed, people getting things done, where you find almost an absence of organization, an absence of management and hierarchy, and then say, okay, gee, how do they accomplish that?
One of the biggest ideas in management today is that don't fix your weaknesses, emphasize your strengths. And that message still is not fully out there.
This is how you get more out of your employees, this is how you measure them, this is how you inspire them. And there's almost a sense that, guys, we're all employees, right?
The reason this is important is because many of the risks that we confront today are unique in that they are designed, almost by design. They are not responsive to and they do not elicit our passion, emotion, our sensibilities, our sensitivities.
You're not risking anything. Now, once you expose yourself to these alternative ideas, what it does is it begins to spread your vision out. It widens your vision to allow you then to begin focusing and answering very specific questions.
You have to ask the people who are giving their lives to your organization, what are we doing to you, often with good intention and inadvertently, but what are we getting in the way of that is stopping you from doing the very best that you can? Persistence
Trumps talent. And the people who end up doing really good things, making big contributions, are often, not always, people who are, fairly talented, but extremely persistent.
This is management's moonshot today. And it's not just something we need to do because it's a moral imperative, it is now a business imperative.
With tools, knowledge, and information freely shared and distributed, burning at the foundations of every human organization, from offices to libraries, schools, and governments. The challenge of the century seems to be to make the most of this flattening, both passionate and scary, but fully democratic moment of management as a technology to successfully embrace the future.